This is Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story. Exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Bo Tiffany.
Welcome back to another episode of Digital Voices. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the history of the piracy in the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's right, we're going to be talking about Captain Kidd and some of the other notable pirates that were in the Caribbean Sea and used the Virgin Islands as a hub for their pirate activities for centuries. The history of pirates in the U.S. Virgin Islands is a fascinating and rich part of the island's cultural history. The Virgin Islands, located in the Caribbean Sea, have been a hub of pirate activity for centuries, with the first recorded instances of piracy dating back to about the 1600s. Over the years, pirates have left a lasting impact on the islands, shaping the economy, culture, and political landscape of the region in significant ways. The first recorded instances of piracy in the Virgin Islands, like I said, dated back to about the 1600s, when pirates and privateers began to use the islands as a base for their operations. The Caribbean Sea was a major shipping lane at the time, and pirates saw an opportunity to prey on the ships that passed through the region. They would hide in many of the coves and bays around the island, waiting for their next target to sail by. The first pirates to establish themselves in the Virgin Islands were known as the Brethren of the Coast, a loosely organized group of sailors and privateers who operated out of the Caribbean. One of the most famous pirates to operate in the Virgin Islands was Captain Kidd, who was active in the region in the late 1600s. Kidd, who was born in Scotland, became a pirate after being hired as a privateer by the British government. He was known for his daring raids on Spanish and French ships in the Caribbean, and he soon became one of the most feared pirates in the region. Kidd eventually made his way to the Virgin Islands, where he established a base of operations and continued his pirate activities. He was eventually captured and executed in England in 1701, but his legacy lives on in the Virgin Islands, where he remains a popular figure in pirate folklore. Kidd's capture was the result of a combination of factors, including the efforts of the British government and the betrayal of one of his own crew members. Kidd had become increasingly paranoid and erratic in his later years, and he was known for his ruthless tactics and his tendency to attack ships indiscriminately. This behavior had earned Kidd a reputation as a ruthless pirate, and it eventually led to his downfall. Kidd's capture began with the betrayal of one of his own crew members, who informed the British authorities of Kidd's whereabouts. The crew member, who had grown disillusioned by Kidd's tactics, provided the authorities with information about Kidd's hideout in the Virgin Islands, as well as information about his ship and his crew. With this information, the British authorities were able to mount a successful operation to capture Kidd and bring him back to England to stand trial for piracy. Kidd's capture marked the beginning of the end for his pirate career, as he was brought back to England to stand trial for piracy. Kidd was accused of attacking British ships and violating his commission as a privateer, and he was sentenced to be hanged in 1701. Despite his attempts to defend himself, Kidd was unable to avoid his fate, and he was eventually executed in England. Kidd's execution marked the end of one of the most colorful and dramatic pirate careers in history, and he had a lasting impact on the history of piracy in the Caribbean. Kidd's legacy continues to captivate audiences to this day, and he remains one of the most notorious pirates in history. His daring raids and his ruthless tactics had earned him a place in pirate folklore, and his legacy continues to shape the cultural identity in the U.S. Virgin Islands and the Caribbean region. Another notable pirate in the U.S. Virgin Islands history is Blackbeard, also known as Edward Teach. He was one of the most infamous pirates to operate in the Caribbean in the early 1700s. He was a notable pirate who is known for his daring raids and his reputation as a ruthless pirate. and he is said to have hidden out in the Virgin Islands on several occasions. Blackbeard was born in Bristol, England in the late 1600s, and he began his pirate career in the early 1700s as a crew member on pirate ships in the Caribbean. He quickly rose through the ranks and became a captain in his own right, and soon established himself as one of the most feared pirates in the Caribbean. Blackbeard was known for his daring raids and his reputation as a ruthless pirate, and he became a legend in his own time. Blackbeard's pirate activities in the Virgin Islands were characterized by his daring and ruthless tactics as he preyed on ships that passed through the region. He quickly became known as a fearsome pirate, and he soon became one of the most feared pirates in the Caribbean. Despite the dangers posed by Blackbeard, the Virgin Islands remained a popular place for pirates to hide out, as the many hidden coves and bays around the island made it easy for pirates to evade the authorities. Blackbeard's pirate activities also had a significant impact on the local economy of the Virgin Islands. Pirates brought wealth to the islands as they used the islands as a base of operations and as a place to store their loot. This wealth helped to stimulate the economy of the islands as pirates spent their money on goods and services in the local communities. Pirates also helped to establish trade routes in the region as they traded with the local population and with other pirates. Despite his reputation as a ruthless pirate, Blackbeard was also known for his cunning and his strategic thinking. He was a master of psychological warfare, and he used his fearsome reputation to intimidate his enemies and gain the upper hand in battles. Blackbeard was known for his flamboyant personality and often dressed in black and tied slow-burning fuses into his beard, creating a fearsome image that struck fear into the heart of his enemies. Blackbeard's pirate career came to an end on November of 1718, when he was killed in a battle with the British Navy off the coast of North Carolina. Despite his death, Blackbeard's legacy lives on, and he remains one of the most famous pirates in history. His daring raids and his reputation as a ruthless pirate have earned him a place in pirate folklore along with that of Captain Kidd. Another pair of interesting characters are Calico Jack and Bonny, who were two of the most infamous pirates to operate in the Caribbean in the early 1700s. Calico Jack, also known as Jack Rackham, was a notorious pirate who was known for his daring raids and his flamboyant personality as well. While Bonny was one of the few female pirates to operate in the Caribbean. So Calico Jack was born in England in the late 1600s. He began his pirate career in the early 1700s as a crew member on the pirate ships in the Caribbean. He quickly rose through the ranks and became a captain in his own right, and soon established himself as one of the most feared pirates in the Caribbean. Calico Jack was known for his daring raids and flamboyant personality. He became a legend in his own time. Calico Jack's pirate activities in the U.S. Virgin Islands were characterized by his daring raids. He was a master of psychological warfare, and he used his flamboyant personality to intimidate his enemies and gain the upper hand in battles. Calico Jack was also known for his association with Bonny, who is one of the few female pirates to operate in the Caribbean. Bonny was born in Ireland in the late 1600s, and she began her pirate career in the early 1700s as a crew member on other pirate ships in the Caribbean. However, for a woman, she established herself as a powerful pirate in her own right, and also became one of the most feared pirates in the Caribbean. The impact of Calico Jack and Bonny's pirate activities in the Virgin Islands was significant. Despite their reputation as ruthless pirates, Calico Jack and Bonny's careers came to an end in the 1720s when they were captured by the British Navy and sentenced to be hanged. Despite their deaths, Calico Jack and Bonny's legacy live on, and they remain two of the most infamous pirates in history. Yet another notable pirate, Henry Avery, also known as Henry Avery, was a notorious pirate who terrorized the seas in the late 1600s. He was known also for his daring raids and his reputation as a ruthless pirate. It's believed that he used the Virgin Islands as a base of operations during his pirate career. So Henry Avery was born in England in the late 1600s. He began his pirate career as a crew member on pirate ships in the Caribbean. He quickly rose above the ranks and also made captain. He carried out his pirate activities in the Virgin Islands by using daring and ruthless tactics. He also was skilled at psychological warfare and used his reputation as a ruthless pirate to intimidate his enemies and gain the upper hand. He was also known for his cunning and strategic thinking, which allowed him to evade authorities for an extended period of time. The impact of Henry Avery's pirate activities in the Virgin Islands was substantial. Despite his reputation as a ruthless pirate, Avery's pirate career eventually came to an end in the late 1600s when he disappeared from the historical record. Nonetheless, his legacy lives on, and he remains one of the most famous pirates in history. One last pirate of note with a historical footing within the U.S. Virgin Islands is Charles Vane. He was an infamous pirate who roamed the seas in the early 1700s, striking fear into the hearts of sailors and merchants alike. He was known for his daring raids and his reputation as a merciless pirate. It's believed that the U.S. Virgin Islands served as a hub for his pirate activities. Charles Vane was born in England in the late 1600s and started his pirate career as a member on various pirate ships in the Caribbean. He rose through the ranks quickly and became a captain. In the Virgin Islands, Charles Vane carried out his pirate activities with a bold and ruthless approach. He was fearless in battle, and his cunning and strategic thinking allowed him to outwit authorities and stay one step ahead of the law. He is known for his daring raids and his reputation. Charles Vane was born in England in the late 1600s and started his pirate career as a member on various pirate ships in the Caribbean. He rose through the ranks quickly and became a captain. In the Virgin Islands, Charles Vane carried out his pirate activities with a bold and ruthless approach. He was fearless in battle, and his cunning and strategic thinking allowed him to outwit the authorities and stay one step ahead of the law. He was known for his daring raids and his reputation as a merciless pirate. Despite his reputation, Charles Vane's pirate career eventually came to an end in 1719, when he was captured by the British Navy and sentenced to be hanged. Despite his death, he remains one of the most famous pirates in history. His legacy continues to shape the cultural identity of the U.S. Virgin Islands and the Caribbean region. So given that Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Bonny, Henry Avery, and Charles Vane were some of the most famous pirates to operate in the Caribbean in the late 1600s and early 1700s, I looked and looked to find evidence of connections between them, thinking that, maybe they had served on some of the same pirate ships, things like that, and I could not find any information on that. The only connection that I did find, which I mentioned earlier, was between Calico Jack and Bonny. While there is limited evidence to suggest that they had direct connections to each other, it is likely that they are aware of each other's activities and reputations between the pirates. The fact that they all used the Virgin Islands as a base of operations suggests that they may have had some degree of interaction with each other, but the exact nature of their relationship remains unknown. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, these legendary pirates continue to capture the imaginations of people around the world, and their legacy continues to shape the cultural identity of the U.S. Virgin Islands and the Caribbean region. And while we might not have direct evidence of it, the Virgin Islands is a pretty small place. It really is. So in conclusion, the U.S. Virgin Islands has had a rich history of piracy dating back to the late 16th century and early 1700s. During this time, the Caribbean was home to a colorful cast of characters, including some of the most notorious pirates in history. The ones that we mentioned, Blackbeard, Calico Jack, Anne Bonny, Henry Avery, and Charles Vane, are just a few of the legendary pirates who terrorized the seas and left their mark on the region. These pirates brought wealth to the islands as they used them as a hub for their operations and a place to store their loot, injecting new life into the local economy. Despite their reputation as ruthless pirates, these legendary figures continue to capture the imagination of people around the world, and their legacy continues to shape the cultural identity of the U.S. Virgin Islands and the Caribbean region. Today, the legacy of piracy in the Virgin Islands lives on through its rich history, cultural traditions, and tourist industry, and it remains a fascinating and enduring chapter of the region's rich maritime history.
This has been Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking Digital Voices with BoTiffany.podbean.com and follow Bo on social media by searching Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.